All right, it is Thursday, October 3rd, time for TJRS. We have got the fall. We finally see the sun out there. We are no longer living in Seattle. We got a lot to get into in today's show. With that and a whole lot more, here's Riggo.
Yeah, Toddy, I gotta go with you on that. My God, I didn't think the sun was ever going to come out again. My grass, by the way, I took a picture of the new grass that I grew in the back. I'll have maybe next week. It's getting there, but I'm not quite sure that it's ready for prime time. But I got in the front, I'm going to have to get a new Holland baler in there. It has gone crazy. I got it tomorrow. But it's been so wet you can't mow. So
yeah, it's like 9 days.
Anyway, the great news is the dude is back from Tulane University.
Oh,
the dude rolled
your
in.
youngest daughter, sophomore at the mighty, what are they, the Green Wave?
Green Wave.
The Green Wave.
Yeah, so she rolled in last night about 8 o'clock. And, you know, and this is bizarre because, of course, both the girls did it. And I think they just do it to make me feel good. But dude's like, can hardly wait to get home so she can get some home cooking. Literally home cooking.
Yeah, you were the chef.
So I texted her last week and I told her, I said, okay, so let's get the menu out and let's just see what we got on there. And I did. So I haven't gotten, she didn't really get back to me other than I said, so I'm assuming when you roll in, that'd have been last night, you want chili and macaroni. And, of course, then she put sour cream and cheese. I got no idea. I mean, you look at what she's eating, you're going, really? I mean, it was not. But anyway, so, yeah. And the interesting thing is, though, Todd, is that Coco, you know, we get to talking. Now, she might as well be in rocket science. She's taking, you know, her major is in the direction of marine biology, but she's taking calculus. I don't know what, calculus?
Kicked my butt.
Oh, I vaguely remember I think I took it it was my spring of my sophomore year. And it was like, hello. I mean, I don't remember anything about it. I still remember a little geometry from high school. Calculus, I got nothing. But she's taking that. She's taking ecology, and she starts talking about things. And you know, we're talking about things at the molecular level, and I can follow to a point. But you got to remember, biology back 60 years ago ain't quite what biology is today. You know what I'm saying? I think a lot's been discovered.
We were dissecting frogs and little baby piglets.
Exactly. Well, back then there was DNA and RNA, but now they've even broken that down. There was mitochondria and all that, but they've even broken it. And dude starts spouting this stuff off. And I have to tell you something. I had a little moment of regret because I'm a naturally curious guy. And you know, I just did a little interview there with Ricky Cobb.
Ricky Cobb of 70 Sports.
Yes. And so, as I told him, you know, when I went to KU, I didn't really go down there to get an education. I went down there to get away from my dad, just anything, getting me out of this house. And so I kind of was, you know, a little bit lacking, and I look back on it now and I regret. You know, I took geology, and I learned a little bit in geology, but it wasn't, you know, I was just, like I told my wife last night, I was lamenting when we was up in bed watching TV. I said, you know, I spent all my time at the Jayhawker and the Wagon Wheel, which is 2 bars right there real close to the edge of campus, instead of home studying.
What else
I managed to cobble it together.
Star need?
Huh?
What else does a young football star need?
Well, but at that point, I didn't even know I was going to be a football star. I really didn't. I was just, like I said, I was just down there thinking about it, as a good friend of ours would say, over a few beers. And so I don't know. It's just and then at the same time, I'm thinking, which that you already heard me say, but you know, our teachers are really, they're at the top of the food chain along with the military, as far as I'm concerned. They, you know, they're the people that, you know, knowledge. It's basically the staff of life. Knowledge has to be, and so I have a newfound. I think I always had some respect, but then again, teachers can give themselves a bad rap.
Yeah.
Because I had a few that weren't exactly, you know, it's like the police. By and large, the police, you want them on your side. You want them, but there are some bad cops out there. It doesn't make any difference, whatever walk of life it is.
Right, there's some people, you're in the wrong line of work.
exactly. You don't belong here. So my point is that I'm really glad to have Coco home, and she's only too glad. I walked into her room last night before I turned in, and I said, "Is this a little bit better than the dorm room?" She's down there, got all of her stuff going on. She likes to crochet now. I don't think she's started that yet. She will probably before she goes. And we have 2 cats, and the 2 cats, while she's gone, they congregate in Lisa Marie in my room. And so last night, the one, and I've got, you know what a hydroculator is, right? It's got those hot packs in water that you can pull out and wrap in a towel and put on you. Well, I have one of those because occasionally my back acts up. So I put the towels that I wrap the hot packs in, I put on top of the hydroculator, and we got both the cats, as soon as it's available, they're up on top because all that heat comes up. It's
they're digging it too.
Oh, it's like, if you're a cat, this has got to be Shangri-La.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's like being home with mom.
The 5-star resort.
The only thing
for
is missing is the breast that feed yourself out of. And they flip flop going back and forth. But now this morning I tiptoed down to Coco's room and cracked the door open. Of course, there the 2 were, just all balled up together on her bed. It's such a sweet picture, I mean, people are going to, well, I am. I mean, I am this big softie here because, between that and the hummingbirds, I mean, I'm really becoming, really, not erudite, but I'm becoming, what do they call it, enlightened. I'm getting into a softer.
You're really in touch with your emotions.
I'm getting in touch with my feminine side. You know, at the Hall of Fame, Todd, I finished my speech with, "I'm a brute with a woman's soul." My mom's. That was the way I finished the speech.
I do remember that. An unbelievable
And
tribute.
Nowadays I realize there's a lot of truth in that, because I actually, with my wife, Lisa Marie, she was going to law school and all this stuff. In a way, you could say I'm actually Mr. Mom. I took the kids, took the girls to school, made them lunch, picked them up after school, did all that stuff with it. Now, Lisa Marie, she has been the one, though, that found out the schools that we wanted to put them in. She did the hard work.
As long as everybody knows their role.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not exactly Coco. I mean, no. All due respect, Lisa Marie, they didn't really want you cooking, but
with all due respect to Lisa Marie, she didn't want to be cooking, so that's not a big surprise here. But yeah, it's all turned out.
And you really enjoy it.
I do, and everything's turned out really well. I don't know how much longer I'm going to enjoy it, though. I'm kind of getting to the point. I think it's like anything else. You do something long enough, and after a while, you kind of look. Every once in a while, I did this just the other day. What was it? I made something that I kind of pulled it out from a recipe. Basically, wasn't a recipe. When I'll go look something up on, when I'm cooking, I'll go to the internet and I'll find a recipe, and I'll go, okay, and then I just kind of eyeball it from there. I just go ahead. I get the general idea from looking at a recipe, but I'm not going, okay, 2 3/4 cups of flour.
We're estimating.
My grandmother was a fantastic baker and a fantastic cook, and that's the way she cooked.
Most grandmas are.
You know why? Because you do it often enough, you just know.
Right.
I mean, I can pretty much tell when I pour something into what is 1 cup, 2 cups, whatever. It's just kind of over the years, you get that information. I know what it was, actually. I made fish. I didn't make chips. I didn't make French fries, but I love fried fish. But basically, once you fry a fish, all that great protein. Well, I ain't the protein so much, but all the good value that's in the fish.
Your omega-3s.
It goes into that hot oil. It's gone. You're not getting much out of it. But boy, I'll tell you what. I told Lisa Marie, I said, man, if I lived in London, I'd probably weigh 300 pounds, because I think that's a staple in London. Fish and chips.
Riggo's Pub.
Yeah, that would have been, instead of Arthur Treacher's, it'd been Riggo's place, and there'd been lots of fish. But anyway, yeah, we're all thrilled at home that the dude is back.
That is awesome. Yeah. Coco. All right. Well, who else is back home is your Washington Commanders. After 2 games on the road.
And stayed on the road.
They stayed on the road. You're right. After going to Cincinnati, taking care of business there, they said, let's keep going west out to Arizona. We'll practice. We'll work out. And
yeah, they're out of the blocks. They're like, what do you call it? Catapult. Boom. 3-1, right?
3-1.
So they're tied for the lead, or are they?
They are in the lead. They are in the lead.
So Philly's 2-2 now.
Yep. And
Dallas 2-2.
Yep.
And Giants 0-4.
I believe that is correct, John.
I don't think they've won.
I don't think they've won yet either.
I don't either.
So we're going to see how long they're going to fight their guts out, being those New York football
Well, the
Giants.
fans will fight their guts out.
Yeah.
And the Philly fans will fight, not their guts, your guts.
We're going to bring on George Wallace from WTOP, who covers the Commanders for the station and has been for many, many years. We're going to bring George in shortly, but I thought we would chat a little bit about some of the extraordinary success that Jaden Daniels and this offense led by Cliff Kingsbury and what they're doing, because without getting, as fans are wont to do, and just, overreact, but this is pretty extraordinary what has been done the last 3 games in particular. First game, played like a rookie, nothing spectacular, but you see the evolution, the just how he has grown game to game. So here's one for you, John. The Commanders' offense through 4 games in 2024, 23 scoring drives, only 19 incomplete passes. Tress Way in 4 games.
He's getting cobwebs over on the sideline.
Hell, you're talking about prolonging this guy's career. 4
I don't know if that will.
punts.
He's got to stay warm.
Yeah.
You got to go out there and punt the ball every so often.
That's where your hammies and everything else.
Well, they do that at net on the side. I think he can punt into the net.
But still,
That's the only punting he's getting done is on the sideline.
He's not mad at it. The 1973 Rams, the only other team in the Super Bowl era that had more scoring drives, 21, than incomplete passes in their first 4 games of the season.
Who comes up with these kind of stats? That wasn't you.
No, hell no.
Who comes up with
No.
this?
Well,
I mean, I got to.
I will say this: the league has the stats and reporters. I mean, it's part of their job to. And again, I know you're not Mr. Stat Master and certain things, but in making correlations for a rookie quarterback, and what my eyes have told me in the last 3 games in particular, is he's playing at an extraordinary level.
And you know what's interesting about this is that, he's traded one team for another. He's got, but I think Kingsbury has a lot to do with this too. This guy knows. I mean, Texas Tech, wasn't that originally where he?
I think you're correct.
Texas Tech to Arizona, and then was a head coach, didn't quite work out, and so he's been an offensive coordinator since. And some guys, I don't know, maybe he is a head coach in the future, but for sure he's really a heck of an offensive coordinator. But think about they get together, and Daniels comes in, they do their. OTAs.
Right.
They're out there, they're working, they're in the classroom. But this is a guy basically in no time at all, hardly played any in preseason, right?
Very little.
I mean, very little.
A couple of series.
And his tune-up game was the opener, the season opener.
Yep.
And talk about a guy that hit the road running. I mean, this it is pretty incredible. Will it stay like? I mean, that's the big question. I saw something, and somebody was saying why Jaden Daniels isn't the number 1 pick for MVP, meaning that the fact his name's even mentioned.
Right.
As a rookie after 4 games,
that's rarefied air.
Yeah, I would say so. But like I said, it's such a different game nowadays, in the sense, and I don't know exactly what to make out of it. But the pitch and catch, this is unbelievable. I mean, these guys, and I don't know if he's had any drops. That counts. In other words, it's an incomplete pass, but a lot of times, is it the receiver's fault or was it an errant throw? It's almost like what is it in baseball? A wild pitch or is it a pass ball? Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those deals. But that's, like you said, 4 games, 19 incomplete passes. And as much as they throw the ball nowadays, that's up. But then again, what's his name? The kid that now is playing for Detroit. 18 out of 18 the other night.
Right. Goff says, oh yeah. Did I show?
He upped the ante.
Yeah. And perfect. That was perfection what Goff did the other night.
That's never been done before, right?
And it had not, John. And knowing that how futile this offense and this team has been for the last number of years, it's been extraordinary. Remember, their third down percentages were terrible. Commanders had scored points on 16 consecutive drives. The longest streak by any team in at least the last 30 seasons.
You know what? It's almost like slow down, guys.
Yeah.
You're getting ahead of yourself.
I know.
The thing, too, you got to keep in mind, I think Brian Robinson has been contributing.
John,
but I don't know which is which.
The running game is, I believe, second in the league.
Yeah, that's my point. And this
balance.
What's points to the offensive coordinator.
No question. It is a balance. They are running the ball. He took the training wheels off after the first game and allowed Daniels to get more vertical. So they're putting together. Then finally,
well, he's got, they're in a position now. The offense is where the defense doesn't know what's going to happen next, and that's basically how you have a great offense.
Well, the defense got off to an awful start against Arizona. Arizona marched right down the field. I think it was 5 plays
in the end zone,
touchdown. Then they got it together, started shutting them down some. But that's right now through 4 games, 1 quarter of the season. That's your weak spot you got to keep an eye on. And can the offense continue? I mean, listen, this is rarefied air. You'll take it while it lasts, and let's see how long it lasts and minimize the mistakes. Jaden Daniels, 82.1 completion percentage,
that's pretty
4
good.
games.
Yeah, I think he's done something that compares with Brady, and it might be that very stat right there. I'm not sure. It would have probably said it if it was, but I saw something the other day that it has something to do with completion percentage.
Yeah,
and that very well may be it. As far as, and I don't know if it has to do with the rookie season or just any season. I mean, the fact is he's not playing like a rookie. You wouldn't know he was a rookie, huh?
Any NFL player. That's the highest comp percentage by any NFL player in a 4-game span.
Okay.
Since 1950.
All
right, so now we are going to bring in our guy, George Wallace. Okay, as promised, John, let's welcome in WTOP Sports Director, longtime Washington Redskins / Commanders beat reporter George Wallace. George, how you doing?
I'm great, guys. How are you? Thanks for having me back.
It's good to see you again, and thank you for joining us.
So you've been out at the park this week. I know you got a bunch of sound and audio from the press conferences yesterday, George. What's the mood like? 3-1, sky high, back home?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot more fun, especially in locker room situations when they're winning, as you can imagine. But the praise has just been about Jaden Daniels, guys. I mean, and I thought it was interesting, Dan Quinn yesterday saying that it's easy to root for a guy like Jaden because of the way he carries himself and the way he's been a leader in the locker room on and off the field. And he said, look, if I felt that I had to have a conversation with him as a rookie about maybe getting his head too big and things like that, I would have. But he hasn't even come close to that. And the players are just seeing what kind of person and leader he is becoming. And everybody's saying, look, you could say all you want in the offseason that you saw it coming, and yes, he's that kind of guy, but nobody's expected the numbers that they put up this first 4 weeks of the season, and just named Rookie of the Week again today and Rookie of the Month. So the accolades keep pouring in, and it's fun because you're starting to see more also a little identity in this team, what he's been able to do, but also, and John loved this, the way they're being able to run the football as of late as well.
Yeah, you're right. You know what? You bring up a great point, I think, that it sounds like, and I from afar, but it would seem like that Daniels has a sense of humility, and that's something that you either got that or you don't. I don't think. I mean, a coach can talk to you, but down deep, some guys are like, yeah, well, what do you know? In other words, it's just inside of you that you want the world, and particularly you get the impression when you watch football. And I'm talking about NFL, and you see all the grandiose, the posturing, and all the stuff after the first play of the game. That there's a sack, and somebody's jumping up and down like they won the Super Bowl. It's refreshing to see somebody that's self-contained, that knows, there's always moments for that, but not every single moment is the biggest play of their life. And I think that, Daniels is somebody, obviously, that Quinn feels like that he's that guy. And that can only bode well for the football team. Because you know what, in a way, I think that if, in fact, and he is becoming the leader, certainly of the offense and maybe the entire team, that players tend to fall in line. I don't know for a fact if that's going to happen because nowadays in the NFL, and I've said this before, I mean, and it starts at the league headquarters in New York. They've kind of followed the WWE way of doing things. It's all about me. Hey, I'm, in other words, think of how many things that they've actually stolen from WWE, quite a bit. And the players themselves now, comport themselves not unlike, The Rock or, all the blowhard, and like I said, all the antics you see. But if the guy at the very top is not that guy, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and you could see You can see the players, too, kind of falling, especially the veterans in this locker room. You got the Jonathan Allens, the Terry McLaurins, guys like that have seen players come in and think that they were up here, but they've all said to a man that he is just level-headed. And I think that one of the interesting things that you hear the players say, too, guys, is that there is no moment too big for him. He has been able to handle everything. Just from a couple weeks ago on those 4th downs on that Monday night, he's like, come on, give me a play. Let's go. I'm ready to go. Put the ball in my hands, and I want to go. And I think that shows a lot to these veteran players, that a guy like that is saying it, but he's also not saying it in a cocky manner, if that makes any sense.
No, and that's my point. You're actually, you're basically honoring my point that that's where the real thing is. That's where the gold is. And I was thinking that with the way the team is developing here, that his example, it's like they say, you lead by example, and that's exactly what. But in this day and age, it's not unlike college football. This roster, what do we say? How many new players are on this team? I don't know the exact number, but in other words,
40-some.
There's guys. What's that?
Yeah, it was. I think it was 40-something. It was 4.
I thought so too.
40-some, yeah.
Which is so. In other words, you're basically everything's up for grabs, really, and it's an evolution. And after 4 games, you got to be kind of happy with the direction that this thing is going in, because every year that used to be a sprinkling of new players come in, but you had the bulk of the team was already there, right? Your nucleus was there. Nowadays, it seems like there's a new nucleus, can be a new nucleus every year, and certainly this year, as it's true for this football team. And it's so refreshing. I mean, I don't want to bring up necessarily old wounds, if you will, but the fact that he isn't on the sidelines taking photographs with people in the stands while the game's going on. That's kind of a nice thing to see, and you wouldn't, so yeah, he's got his head screwed on the right direction.
George, they get Austin Eckler back this week. Is that correct?
Yes, he has passed all the tests. I talked to him yesterday. He is ready to go. And I think McNichols performed very nicely the other night with a couple of touchdowns. But I think I was worried that was going to be a big loss the other day, but it turned out not to be. But it is good to have him back because of the 1-2 combination between Brian Robinson and Eckler in that backfield. And they're going to need it. I mean, the Browns – yes, the Browns are the Browns, but as Eckler said yesterday, they still have a guy named Myles Garrett, too, out there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the question I've got, and because we were just talking about it, and I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but Robinson's had a couple of 100-yard games so far this year, hadn't he? I mean, he had
100 again the other day. He had 133 a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, he's up among the league leaders, I would guess, in rushing yardage.
I believe they're second in the league in rushing, George. I mean, the balance – because, Daniels isn't out there throwing it 30 or 40 times.
Well, and of course, he's part of the reason that they're top of the part in rushing as well. I mean, he's getting it done on 2 different levels.
True, which gets back to Kingsbury play calling, spreading it out, and you see why that guy is as good as he is and how he is stretching things out and the early phases of the game, John, and we were talking about this. So you said there's a rhythm to the game. And he has that. He knows the early stuff he's doing to set it up for later down the road. It's fascinating to watch that we haven't seen around here in a long time for like going, okay, I get it. You start connecting the dots here. Now watch the deep one coming.
Well, yeah, it's human nature, I think, actually, George, that you get, you keep seeing the same thing, and all of a sudden your mind just goes to, okay, this is what I got to do, and then all of a sudden it's, whoa, this is not the same thing, and the ball's behind me now. And that's, I was talking about this earlier on the Ricky Cobb show about, like you said, the rhythm of the game, where if you start dictating to the defense, and that's what you're seeing right here, and the defense is on their heels. They don't know what to do. There's that old saying, they don't know whether to shit or sharpen their pencil, and that's kind of where these guys are in.
I haven't heard that one in a while.
I hate to be so crude, but I like it.
George, go ahead. Is that also the way Kingsbury's calling it? I mean, it almost seems like he's looking down that play sheet, and this whatever he's pointing at is working. And I think, and John, I mean, is that more of a confidence thing coming from the quarterback, where he's going to stand in there? And that's the other thing with these numbers that he's putting up, guys. 21 to 23 the other day, 26 to 30. And it's not like he's dinking and dunking down the field. I mean, he's standing there and throwing the ball, and it seems like the confidence is just building play after play.
Yeah, I got to believe exactly what you're saying, that Kingsbury knows exactly what he's dealing with a superbly talented quarterback. And the fact that, I mean, this guy's got that extra tool in his kit. Not only is he would appear to be a guy, and he's growing from the standpoint that he can sit in the pocket and wait and throw the ball, or if he sees something better, he's got good eyes, good sense, and good judgment that he'll take off and run. I mean, in other words, that's what it's all about, keeping a defense guessing and off balance, because a lot of times it works the other way too. You get a really good defense, what do? They keep the offense off balance, so they don't know what they're doing. And right now, Washington's doing everything correct on offense. There's no question about that.
All right, George. What are they saying about the defense out there that, through 4 games, it's been a glaring weakness? It got better last week, for sure, although after that opening drive, which was a shock to the system, you're like, what in the hell is going on here? So what are they saying about the defense? How are they feeling?
Yeah, we talked to Bobby Wagner about that yesterday too. It's he said it was encouraging the other day that they did take that next step, and after that first drive, he thought it was going to be another shootout. But they were able to buckle down, get off the field third down, actually tackle some players, which is kind of fun when you actually tackle guys. But they know they're not there, and it was interesting because Dan Quinn and Joe Witt said to us last week that the defense isn't as far away from being as consistent as they want that it looks to the outside. Now, maybe we saw that step last week, and that was a good thing that they did take the next step and held Kyler Murray in check, basically, and that Cardinals offense in check. But then now you get, into Deshaun Watson coming here, kind of the same kind of deal. So they have to be able to do it back-to-back weeks. Yeah, because, and as we talked about a couple weeks ago, you can't get shootouts, right? Every week. You can't put up 40. This offense isn't going to be able to do that every week. You're going to run into a defense at some point that's going to stop you and actually force you to punt. Although they did punt last week for the first time in a few weeks, so that was fun.
Yeah, well, he's saying that Tress Way, he's probably losing his mojo because he doesn't get on the field. You know what I was going to say? Something interesting here and kind of ironic, because at least back when I played, and even several years ago, this is an anomaly with what the team's doing. As they say, usually at the beginning of the season, the defense is way ahead of the offense. It's ironic that it's just the opposite here, and you could make the statement that way ahead is the way to say it, not just ahead. But they're head and shoulders above the defense right now. Well, and basically they're carrying the team.
Well, that's what's baffling, John, because all the changes on offense. And you got a ton on defense, too, but not nearly as many. And some of the guys you were really counting on up front, Payne and Allen, and some others where clearly there's nothing but for them to go this way.
Yeah, agreed.
And so, George, are you going to the game on Sunday?
I will be there.
Outstanding. All right. Well, we'll get a report from you next week, John.
I want to know what's on the training table, George. So,
You got it.
Make sure you pay it a visit.
George, great catching up with you as always.
Thanks, George.
And we'll check in with you next week.
Thanks, guys.
All right, John, what do you think the line is for the Cleveland Browns at your...
I got to believe it's like Washington -5.
-3.
I was going to say -3, and I went, well, I was so far off last week. No, it was the week before.
Right.
It was the
Cincinnati game, which was shocking.
Cincinnati was a -8.
It was a -8. So Commanders getting some respect. And I tell you, looking at the schedule here, so you got Cleveland at home this week. Then you go to play at Baltimore the next week, right? That's a big game. All right, you're going against experience.
Well, you're getting in with the big boys.
Yeah, you're amongst that's one of the elites. But then you have Carolina and Chicago at home and at the New York Giants. So you pull off, you beat Cleveland, and I mean, you think where you could be halfway through the season, given the way the schedule is falling up with,
and have one loss,
one or two.
Well, who do you see in the next 3 games?
Mean, you knock off the Ravens,
and you're playing over there. Correct?
Yeah, you're playing over there, and then you got Carolina, Chicago, New York. That's the dregs of the league right there. So fascinating times. All right, John, we're now going to get into some old school football featuring yours truly. So I found this. There's a gentleman that has a great account online. I believe it's called Old School Football. We'll give props where props are due.
And old school, remember, I came in the league in 71. That's over 50 years ago. If you would go back to when I was a rookie, and go back 50 years, the league had just started. It sounds a little bit more antiquated when you say it that way.
So I'm going to set the stage here, and you're going to hear the announcer. I'm going to be able to pause this video, and you're going to hear the old school announcer. And I remember this game a little bit for its just brutality in the weather, the conditions, and the actual play itself. This is the Buffalo Bills.
In Buffalo or at Shea?
You were at Shea.
Okay.
You were at Shea. And so let's fire it up here. All right. We got John Riggins.
Last week in Orchard
Ooh,
Park,
look at that
New York,
wind.
the
Typical
winds
at Shea
blew
Stadium back in those days.
gusting to 45
The
miles per
Pride.
hour,
That must have
and
been the
then rain
Baltimore
came.
or Buffalo fans.
But
Oh,
football
so
is
it's
an outdoor
raining.
game, so
Okay.
the show
God,
must
you would
go
think
on regardless of the conditions. The elements affected everyone's performance, but one man suffered more than the rest. Joe Namath is one of the purest passers the game has ever known, but this day was not fit to prove it.
Oh, so this is in Buffalo.
Oh, it is Buffalo.
Yeah, because I can tell you that that's turf.
Oh, you're right.
That's David Knight.
Other times, the saturated plastic turf made maneuvering
Boozer.
impossible.
Yeah, this is an old rich stadium.
Safe.
From
I
every
was
angle,
at
the
home.
storm negated Namath's greatness, turning tight spirals into fluttering prayers.
Yeah, we played in a couple games like this. Oh, wow, look at that.
The climatic conditions relegated Namath to handoffs as the Jets had to improvise for every yard.
Come on, Joel.
Not much there. Oh. Was that a fumble or did I just toss that?
Was that a little improv? Were you doing a little improv there?
I don't remember. More than likely it was a fumble.
I would go improv.
Enough of a ground game to set up 2 Bobby Howfield field goals and a 13-yard Don Riggins TD slosh.
That's it, just like a fly. Get off of me. Get away.
Buffalo
Get away.
Bills did not even pretend they could beat the elements. Number 12, Joe Ferguson, threw only 2 passes, both incomplete.
There you go. Now that is old school football.
For 117 water-soaked yards.
The Jews slashing.
Yes, sir.
O.J. Simpson
Ooh,
brought the
look at
ball
that
close,
field.
and Ferguson went the last
Ralph
yard on a
Baker,
broken
51.
play that fooled the Jets more than the Bills.
Ooh, caught everybody sleeping. Fake handoff to
Now
Jim Braxton, the fullback.
Jim Braxton. Can you imagine a game where he threw 2 passes, Ferguson, and didn't complete either one? And Namath did not complete a pass until the 4th quarter.
I believe the game that Simpson actually broke the 2,000-yard barrier at Shea Stadium last game, 1973, I think it was.
It was the previous.
I think he threw 4 passes in that game. Simpson carried the ball over 30 times, and and the fullback, Jim Braxton, carried it over 20 times. I mean, I'm telling you what, I remember playing in New England, we had a kid, Namath was injured, Bill Demery had to come in and play. I think he threw 3 or 4 times. Boozer and I carried the ball all day that afternoon.
Different game, right?
It's a completely different game. Yeah, no question about it.
But the real hero of this damp day was O.J.'s blocking back, number 34, Jim Braxton.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that guy,
he was a hoss, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like 250, 260?
Yeah. He was like an offensive guard, and he could run. Look at this. I mean, he's cutting and running over people. But he was, let's just say, overshadowed by a Heisman Trophy winner. He wasn't going to get his due.
Yeah.
21 yards over the synthetic sponge to give Buffalo a 16-12
synthetic sponge.
fourth-quarter lead.
Basically, that's about the size of it. Oh, look at he ran right. There's Early Thomas, 45 on the tackle. But he's going to get in the end zone.
The rest would be
Richard
left to
Sowles,
Joe
number
Namath.
46.
The 2
They're my
minutes
old
left in
Jet
the game,
teammate.
Yeah.
Failed on 15 straight passes. For the first time in his life, he faced a game without a completion. So with 94 yards in front
He
of
looked
him,
so damn
he
cold.
went back to the air.
Well, there's nothing worse than like 35 degrees and wet. I can tell you that right now. That is not a good place to be.
David Knight was the first completion for either team. But 2 plays later, the Winds once again took the snap from number 12's Ariel, and number 20, Robert James, accepted the gift.
Oops.
Ooh. Well, that's the one thing. You look at this. Ooh, there was a nice tackle. Oh, Mike Adamley, special teamer.
The Elements and the Bills had brought Joe Namath worth as Buffalo persevered in the wind and rain for a 16-12.
Well, if Al Cowlings was playing in that game, I'm thinking he was.
AC probably was.
I'm pretty sure that he might have been on the field.
Old school football.
That was. I thought you might be pulling up. There was a game we played in Baltimore years ago. It was actually a kind of at the time, I believe it was some kind of a record-breaking game because both Unitas and Namath threw for over 400 yards, each one of them.
Wow.
I think I caught like a 60-yard touchdown pass. You know what? This is really odd, too, because it was Ted Hendricks was their outside linebacker.
The Mad Stork.
And I remember going back to the huddle telling Joe, I said, Joe, I can, let me run a flat and then up. I said, I can beat Ted. Ted can't run with me. And basically all the safeties were falling back, and I run out to the flat. I forget what it's called. It's been that long, and plus I wasn't a student of the game. But anyway, and then I turn it upfield. Namath hits me with a strike, and I think it was like a 65-yard touchdown pass.
We'll get on that.
But the point I was going to say is, Joe never said, "Hey, we got to work on this. We got to, back in the day, you would think the offensive coordinator would go, hey." This guy can,
Riggo in the flat.
A potential.
Well, you were
receiver.
a mismatch because you could outrun any of the linebackers.
There was no linebacker that could run it exactly. That was like taking candy from a baby, as the old saying goes.
That's incredible.
But it was a different game back then.
Different game.
And the fullbacks were, and you got to remember the offenses were designed for the fullback block. Every play that you weren't carrying the ball, you were at the point of attack. That's just the way it was. There was no, you weren't a decoy on anything. You had to block. Plus, if it was a pass play, more than likely you had a pass responsibility. If there was no blitz or you had to help somebody out, then you went out on a pass pattern. You ran so far on a pass pattern that you never were going to get the ball because you were not considered a prime target. So, and it was actually before Joe Gibbs got here. That the offense of 78, 79, that I started coming out on third downs. And I never had a problem with it because I'm going, well, they never throw me the ball. I got to run. Why am I going to make, it's a lot easier to trot over to the sidelines than to sprint on a pass route. It's like, to me, it's always about energy. I'm like a wild animal. It's like geese. They know when the weather's coming bad, we better get up and go get something to eat and get back down here on this pond or this lake because it's going to be tough going here in a little bit. We ain't going to burn that energy.
Efficiencies.
Yes, that's
all
exactly
right,
what
John, another quick piece of tape that we got here. This is a Todd bit, something that fascinated me. This happened this weekend. You've got your Auburn Tigers playing the Oklahoma Sooners and the pregame warm-ups, and you got your cheerleaders, and you got the teams are now running out onto the field. There's and bam, the cheerleader.
Wait a second.
There it comes. There's the cheerleader doing a half twist, half twist. Bam! He clocks the DB for Oklahoma, who never saw him. That's a hell of a hit.
And I believe it was like this is when he hit, but it wasn't his feet that hit him. He hit him with his hands. I think.
This guy is rocking.
Well, let's just say that was poor choreography. They released the hounds a little too soon. Something went wrong there.
So, Oklahoma DB.
Was he out for the game?
At first, they thought he was knocked out, but he ends up being fine. And then Oklahoma came back with 17 points in the fourth quarter and kicked their ass. So take that.
Where was the game played? In Auburn?
Yeah, the game was down in Auburn. And
gotta watch out. You never know when a cheerleader's gonna sneak out of the grass.
Those rough cheerleaders there, John.
Yeah, they got some bone crushers.
All right, John. So just here in the last week or so, there's been some significant passings of some folks that have just come in. We used to always say they come in threes with deaths and certain
I know
things.
rattlesnakes come in pairs, though.
Yeah.
They don't come in threes, just to do. There's usually another rattlesnake around when you find one of them. Just thought I'd throw that in, little tidbit.
So we lost Kris Kristofferson, Dikembe Motumbo, who was only 58.
Yeah.
A Hall of Famer. He had brain cancer. John Amos, the incredible actor, and Pete Rose. And Pete Rose was just the previous day had been at an autograph signing in Nashville.
But I think, was he in a wheelchair? It looked like
he was in a wheelchair, and Tony Perez, his teammate, who was with him at the signing, because he flew back to Vegas where he lived, and they found him in his house there. And Tony Perez said something was off with him that day before, that he had no energy, wasn't the same guy, and he felt that something wasn't right.
So you might say he kind of saw it coming.
Yeah, so, and, we talked about and doing some research, because John Amos, as an example, I mean, again, another great American story with his background. He was an athlete. He was a football player. Didn't you say he played with your former teammate, Early Thomas?
Yeah, and I don't remember when Good Times was on television, but I believe it was in the 70s, wasn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
It had to be, because otherwise, Early Thomas, the guy that pointed out number 45 in the footage that we were just looking at, I got the impression from early that they played together at CSU, but I had no idea Amos was 84 years old.
84.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought he was that old. But, I did that play, Illegal Motion, out at the Olney Theater in Olney, Maryland. Well, that was back in the early 90s. And there was a kid that was from New Jersey. Amos hailed from New Jersey. That I think he was born in Newark, and I can't remember. Oh, and Orange is where he went. He went to Orange High School, and he actually came down to the play. I don't recall. Actually, I might have met him, but he did. He wasn't down there to see John Riggins act. He wasn't down there. He was down there to see this other kid who was kind of a rising. At the time had a rising career, but I never knew whatever happened to him. I'm not talking about John. I'm talking about the kid that was the actor.
Well, I don't know if you remember. He was the weatherman on the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
It was Gordie Howard. I do remember that. And then Good Times was 1974 through 76.
Yeah, there you go. It's only 2 years, 3 years?
It seems like it was longer than that.
Exactly.
But that's when that iconic role where he's the dad that when Dad's Bark was on, you better get your mind right.
Yeah, but you know what? There was a lot of similarities when you think of it, at least for me, in that the way that show was presented, in that, like you said, because he had no problem laying down the law, right? I mean, with JJ and and the crew. But then again, when Florida, it was like you could tell that he could do all the bluffing he wanted, but when she laid down the law, he listened.
Yeah,
and it's exactly what it was in our house.
Now, Florida.
my dad would, and every once in a while, my mom would go, Gene, that's not going to happen.
And it was
and he could just see his tail went between his legs.
He was like,
she wouldn't, he got his run of the house, 95% of the time. But there was 5% when we all knew who the real boss was.
Indeed. Hell of an actor. Kris Kristofferson.
Oh, that guy. Talk about a talented guy.
His background. You talk about a renaissance man.
Unbelievable.
And again, he played football. He was he came from a military family.
Yep. I think that's right.
His parents really wanted him to go in the military. He eventually did, and became a helicopter pilot. I think made the rank of captain.
And then what did you say, Ranger? He was became a Ranger.
He did that as well.
Sounds like Colonel Kurtz, doesn't it?
Was a Golden Gloves boxer as well, and so it was fascinating. Rhodes Scholar.
That's the other part.
A Rhodes Scholar.
And one of the best writers. I guess Nashville is what you'd say. I mean, country western writer. I remember, I didn't know who he was really, but I'm talking about the early 70s, and he was probably just getting started musically speaking back then.
You're 100%
And
correct.
when I started hearing I fell in love with his music. I loved all of his. It was like him. Marty Robbins was another guy that I thought, Merle Haggard, those guys were all singing these songs that really, I don't know, for whatever reason, they resonated with me. But he was, and then, you know what? The guy was a great actor, too.
He did.
I mean, like I said, he could do it all. He could do it all.
He did it
I don't know what he's like in the kitchen, but you know what? You do that other stuff. You don't have to be a cook.
Well, it said so he goes to Nashville, like you say, in the late 60s, and his family, his parents, they considered him a ne'er-do-well who was dragging down the family name. And they're like, because he literally was emptying trash cans and did a janitorial job.
Just to get by.
Just to get into this, also to see the sessions of Johnny Cash and the guys that were doing it. And then he was writing, and that's when it all took off in that time period, as you said it.
I think a lot of artists, now I could be wrong about this because I'm not going to pretend I know about the music business, but I think a lot of them start out as writers, and their music, they're musicians, but a lot of times their music gets picked up by somebody, recorded, and then all of a sudden
you want to be the songwriter. That's where the money is.
Yeah.
It ain't the performer. And it's funny because he had some of the country stars. They took his songs, Johnny Cash and the other gentleman that you just mentioned, and then they said, no, you need to sing now. You need to do it. And he goes, I can't sing. I sound like a fraud.
Yeah.
And they're like going, no, you're a storyteller.
He had a great voice, I thought.
You're a storyteller, and you can do this.
And he knew the story.
Right.
In other words, he wrote it. For whatever reason, I think that the artist that writes it and then they perform it, it comes from a deeper sense in them than it would be somebody who looks at it. Unless, it's like in acting, where you particularize the scene or whatever. And in other words, it's everything is so in other words, it's what would this mean to you type of stuff. And it's already there. I mean, storytelling is made from that stuff. You actually know the story, and it comes from, a place that you're really connected to. Mm-hmm. Somebody else can tell the same story, but it wasn't their story.
If you ain't been through it,
yeah,
then it's fiction, right?
I think so.
So what do you think about, I told you about this story. It's called the Pete Rose story, Charlie Hustle. I believe it's 4 parts on HBO.
I think I saw parts of it.
Well, I saw it all about a month ago, and it's incredible on a number of levels. And it, I was a big Pete Rose guy, and the Big Red Machine. They were my favorite team when they had it going on. And again, another conflicted guy. And the one thing about this series that was brilliant in the way that they did it. First off, the historical footage you see is just mind-blowing. Black and white stuff from the 50s and the 60s and him coming up. But Pete ends up being like a pathological liar. And
about everything or just about...
Not everything, but certain things.
Well, certainly his gambling.
And certain things, and they caught him in it. They didn't set him up. He finally acknowledges stuff. Some innocuous stuff that he said his grandmother had a chimpanzee. Chimpanzee was my best friend. When other people are like going, that was no chimpanzee. He tries to explain it later.
That is pathological. There you go.
But
bingo.
And so it's so. I'm so conflicted about him. But he was a guy from the wrong side of the tracks in Cincinnati. Taskmaster father. His dad, he was a badass football player, and he was the ultimate
taskmaster. Or
yeah, and Pete.
Pete was a football player.
And so he owned Cincinnati, and then once everything goes down, and he still thought he was going to when they banished him in 1989. He still thought he was going to be fine in the Hall of Fame, but they changed the rules when he was eligible in 91. It said anybody that's on the permanent list that you are, they changed the rules, and it's called
just for him.
It's called the Pete Rose rule, that if you were on the permanent list, you're not eligible to be on the ballot. So the Hall of Fame thing, and you and I have talked about it ad nauseum because of how it operates and how conflicted it is and how silly it can be, and for our friend Joe Jacoby, right? And the baseball, it's the same thing.
It always goes back to Joe for me.
Yeah.
When they start talking about the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. And so you got the steroid guys. Are they ever going to get in? And the Pete Rose. And as Pete said, he goes, I don't want to get in. I don't want to get in if I'm gone. And he goes, this is from my family. He goes, my name. He goes, I broke every record. I did everything. He goes, I am baseball. So if they don't want to honor me and put this in where I can celebrate it with my family, then let's not even worry about it.
I can appreciate that point of view.
Yeah.
I certainly can. I think that if you take a poll across America, you'll find this is not unlike our political climate. There's 50% on one side, basically 50%. There's a lot of people who say this is ridiculous. Why isn't it in the Hall of Fame? And then there are those people who say, well, now hold on a second. This is the integrity of the game, and that that this was gambling, and now gambling is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. So you kind of go, yeah, but this is the rules. We got rules here. It's kind of like stop signs, right? We got a stop sign there where I live. That's a 3-way stop sign. Now you can see clearly in all directions. I don't even slow down because I can see far enough, and I just drive through it. Now, there's policemen that would see that, and they would go, yeah, it makes sense to me. There's nobody there. And then there's other policemen that be, you just ran our stop sign.
You were going 56 and a 55.
So it just depends on, how you look at things. I mean, clearly, and that makes you look at, now I don't know what the argument is for, but there's a guy in the what do you call it, in the Pro Football Hall of Fame that was found responsible for 2 people's deaths, murders.
Yeah.
And you would think that gambling, murder. Now, which one do you think is a little bit more serious? And yet, this person is still in the Hall of Fame in Canton, and this other guy who gambled on games can't get in to the Hall of Fame in in New York, or I can't. Cooperstown. So like I said, it's just a hot potato, whichever way you want to go. I know it's interesting today because Fay Vincent, who he was the commissioner at one point in time, wasn't he?
Absolutely.
And he wrote an article, and of course, I think
he replaced Bart Giamatti.
Yes,
Paul Giamatti's dad.
Yeah, that's him. And he kind of was. It was, you could tell he had an edge, that he was not in. And I can understand that to a point, that that he lied and was kind of a scurrilous type of an individual, if you will. But at the same time, you can't. I mean, he made, he said, well, his record, basically it's because of longevity. I mean, he wasn't anything like the hitters Roger Hornsby, and he mentioned somebody else. And I'm thinking to myself, well, yeah, but you know what? Longevity counts. To be able to play at that high of a level, that kind of tells you he's a different cat. If you want to take these other guys that maybe were more prolific per se, hey, to me, you're going to tell me one, he's not the greatest. I got to tell you that I think if you can do that over a longer period of time than anybody, that's a certain type of greatness, if you will.
Absolutely.
So you can't so you could tell that, that he was grousing about it because he didn't really want to admit, at least that's the impression I got, that he didn't really want to admit that Rose was that great of a player because he had personal enmity for him. Because of and he said that when they sat him down and asked him, he was in the room with Giamatti, and they asked him point blank, "Did you gamble?" And he goes, "Well, I gambled on everything else, but I never gambled on baseball." A blatant lie, And so
that's the beauty of this series, John. I encourage you to watch it all because he's just a guy. It's what you see is what you get.
Yeah, exactly.
There is no political correctness. It's unvarnished. It's unfiltered. And when he tries to do his rehab tour, his image rehab tour or whatever, he steps on landmines left and right.
Oh, yeah.
It's
one of the worst things that I ever saw, though, was what's his name? The interview before the All-Star game with Jim.
Jim Gray.
Jim Gray. Jim Gray was like a what do you call it, a chihuahua chewing on a Doberman's leg. It's like, hey, Jim, you're lucky that you're got a camera here and there's thousands of witnesses here. I don't know if you'd be doing that to Pete out in someplace in some neighborhood that there's nobody around on a dark night. Be wanting to grill him on this stuff. You get a little bit of false moxie here. I think if you a false courage, you might say. But
Pete, like I say, who cares now? In my opinion, I think it'd be.
Well, it makes no difference to me whether he gets in or not, because he's not here,
right,
to appreciate it. And based on what his wishes were, well, if you're not going to put me in while I'm alive, then screw you. I don't give a goddamn.
What's the joy? What's the point of it? Is that just now for baseball trying to correct a wrong that a lot of people thought?
Well, and it's ironic you say that, because that kind of shows you the underbelly of
crassness.
Yeah, in other words, they held a grudge, and they weren't going to back up from it until he was gone, and now all of a sudden there'll be conversations because of his accomplishment.
Do the right thing because he's no longer here.
Yeah, so he can't enjoy it. This was their punishment.
I think most families in dealing with the athlete, John, would be like, no. You had your chances. Yeah. And no, thank you. That's what I would hope. I don't need to be in this club, okay? How dare you now use it for all these other purposes because you guys want to come around and do the right thing when you had.
Well, wait a second now. You're overlooking one minor detail, Todd. How much did you say you would pay me to let my dad go into the Hall of Fame? Oh yeah. Well, sit down. Come on back here. We can talk.
Well, let's see what the market rate is.
Because you know what? When it's all said and done, Pete would go, well, under those circumstances, yes, I could go along with that.
What are the odds?
Yeah. That's exactly what he'd ask.
Well, the odds are that this show, TJRS, is done for this particular week.
I was just getting ready to say that's kind of where I was heading with it. So, for Toddy and myself, it's El Riggo, and we are out.